Good evening. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. Our hope and our prayer is that you will be affirmed in your understanding your strength, that you will be encouraged as you start the journey of living your strength, Please watch the dog. Can you see the dog? Hope you can see the dog on the screen there. Hope you can see the dog. Watch the dog, please. Well, even dogs struggle with COVID. But we thought you just needed a laugh after a long day. But really, there's another reason why we're showing you this cute dog. Is we're going to be showing you a couple of video clips. And we wanted to make sure you could hear the dog, because if you could not hear the dog, please adjust the volume on your computer. You'll find it in a small little icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We also recommend that you adjust your Zoom setting to the presenter view. It might help you enjoy the webinar a bit more. You know, the Gallup organization, they do surveys all around the world in the area of human effectiveness and well-being. And in their research, they found that people who use their strength every day are 300% more likely to report having an excellent quality of life. They are 600% more likely to be engaged in their work and 8% more productive. Isn't that interesting? Yet, they also found that only 17% of people surveyed actually do use their strength every day, which begs us to ask the question, why? Why is it that so few of us actually use our strength every day? Peter Drucker is considered one of the best thought leaders of the last century. In his best-selling book, The Effective Executive, he says that most people do not know their strength. Most of those who think they do are often wrong. You see, very often, my friends, we understand our strength based on the assumptions and expectations of other people. So my question to you is, do you know your strength? Are you using your strength every day? The objective of our webinar is twofold. One is to give you a formula to help you understand and communicate your God-given strength, but then walk you through a process to help you define the roles and the relationships that you are supposed to use in using your strength, and in so doing, fulfill your life calling. So that's our objective. If that meets with your expectations, please continue to be with us. If you think you're in the wrong place, well, I hope you can take the rest of the evening off and do something more fun. You know, our agenda is going to be in the form of a topical framework. We're going to spend about half of our time with a scientifically based formula, but also a biblically based formula to help you define your strength. Because once you define your strength, you can communicate them to others. Then we're going to take the next half of our time first linking your understanding of strength to your life purpose, the visions that you have, the roles you're expected to play, but also the impact you have on the people around you. Because your strength gains its value in the roles you play as you impact other people. So we're going to talk about the people in your life. And then we try to link this to how you set goals and activities, a bit of time management. And then if you like, after all of this, please feel free to give yourself any title. Why is this important? Because unfortunately, we live in a world that's driven by titles. After meeting someone in after church or in a club or somewhere, one of the most common questions we ask is, what do you do? And very often the answer is in that title. I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a plumber, I'm a policeman. And we seem to build our self-identity around that title. And we begin to be engaged in activities and demands placed on us by virtue of that title. Our whole life purpose and our calling becomes defined by that title. Our relationships become defined by that title. And in the process, we lose our sight, our view of the uniqueness of our unique strength. So we hope we will change the model around and encourage you to begin thinking of your identity and who you are in relationship to your God-given strength. Now, when we used to do this with our corporate clients, we used to take about 2 days in this webinar and this material, but I'm told that you are very smart and we're going to cover it only in half an hour, or well, maybe an hour. But this is not true, because at the end of the webinar, we're going to give you links to free online resources and tools available to you, as well as a 12-week small group community building experience. We call it the Strength Learning Lab, which we hope you will take advantage of and join us. Now, my friends, please don't feel that you have to take a lot of notes, because we are also going to give you a link to download a book that we published with the support of the Gallup organization, in which you're going to see everything that we share here and a whole lot more. And should you wish and you have specific needs, we would be glad to connect with you in one-on-one follow-up conversation to support you in any way we can. So please don't feel that you have to take a lot of notes, and just enjoy the webinar with us. Here's a question for you. What do you think would happen if we would stop thinking about what's wrong with people and start thinking of what's right with them? What would happen if we think about what's right with people rather than being fixated and obsessed by looking at what's the deficiencies and what's wrong with people? This question came to the mind of Dr. Don Clifton. He was an education psychologist at the University of Nebraska, and he looked at the field of psychology, and it was all deficit-based. It was deficit-based. We studied depression to help depressed people. We studied criminology to help criminals. And he wondered what would happen if we start thinking about what's right with people rather than fixating on what's wrong with them. His research led him to the fact that what makes people really do well and excel really, really well is understanding their basic talents. And his research led him to identify more than 5,000 talents. He developed a model by which to help organizations select employees based on their talents, not necessarily based on their academic standards or job description. His consulting practice grew, and he bought the Gallup organization. And with the resources and the scientists at Gallup, he developed this tool called Strength Finder. And today, more than almost 30 million people have used Strength Finder around the world. It's used by 90% of the top largest companies in the world, the Fortune 500 companies, as well as many of the leading universities. Now, we asked you to, in your homework, to do one of the two assessments, Strength Finder, or there is another one called High Five, which is a free assessment. And when you did that, if you have done that homework, if you had done that assessment, it gave you what they call your top five strengths. You have many other strengths, but the report gives you your top 5 strengths. And along with each of these strengths, it gives you a detailed description of each of these strengths. Now, which of these strengths, when you read the description, resonated with you? It made you say, that's truly me, and I like what I see. Do you mind typing in the chat, which of your strengths is your favorite strength? In our coaching, we tell people that's what you lead with. That's your leading strength. So please type in this chat, if you have done your homework, please type, what's your favorite strength? What's your favorite strength? Because we might come back to it later on in the webinar, in our discussion. Could you please take a moment and just write that down? Just write it in the chat if you can, please. Now, how do you define strength? How do you define strength? If you go to a park, one of those nature parks, and you see these people pushing these big boulders up a hill, and you ask them, how do you define strength? They most likely would define it based on the size of the boulder they can push up the hill. If you walk into a car dealership and you ask one of the salespeople, how do you define strength? They're going to define it in terms of the horsepower of the engine of the car. If you go to a gymnasium and watch these people pumping iron and you ask them, how do you define strength? They're going to define it in terms of how many pounds you can lift up. So I'd like to go to the scientists at Gallup and ask them, how do you define strength? And they're going to say that strength is an ability to provide consistent, near perfect performance in a given activity. Strength is an ability to provide consistent, near perfect performance of a given activity. May I ask you please to do something for me? Could you pick up a pen or a pencil and write your first name? Please write your first name. This is not a trick question, I really mean it. Do write your first name if you have a pen or a pencil, please. Now, were you able to write your first name? I hope you did. Well, you have the ability to write your first name. And my friends, there are millions of people around the world who do not have that ability. There are millions of people around the world who do not have the ability to write their first name. You see, strength being an ability differentiates our thinking from many of the other assessments that you may have taken, which deal with personality type. Assessments like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, colors, all of these deal with more the personality type. But in strength, we deal with what is it that you are able to do? What is it that you are able to accomplish in your activity? And according to Gallup, strength is the ability to do the same thing consistently, almost perfectly. And you could write your name on a Christmas card, you can write it on a love letter, you can write it on a check, you can write it in a variety of formats, and you have the ability to trust that ability to do it perfectly as we go along. Now, according to the science of strength psychology, which is taught around many universities around the world, strength is a result of a formula, is a result of many elements that starts with talents. And these talents, they grow and develop by the knowledge you acquire, the skills you develop, and the experiences of life. So your strength is a result of your talents that grow and mature over time by the knowledge you acquire, the skills you develop, and the experiences of life. And we're going to dig deeper in each of these formulas with the hope to help you understand how your strength is made together so you can own it and communicate it to other people. So we start with talents. And again, allow me to go back to the scientists at Gallup and ask them, how do you define talents? And they say that talents are naturally recurring patterns of thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that can be productively applied. They are your natural feelings or thoughts and behaviors that can be used in a productive manner. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Two people walking down the street and they see a child. He had fallen off a bicycle and bleeding from the head. One person would naturally run to the child, they pick him up to hug him and comfort him. The other person would pick up the phone and call 911. These are two different natural reactions, two different natural behaviors towards the same situation because they are two different talents. But what do talents look like? What do talents look like? Would you please take a moment and watch this short video?
By anyone's standards, it is an extraordinary story about a teenager who was diagnosed with autism when he was a baby. His mother was told he would never be able to read or to write, but he did learn to read. Not only that, he taught himself algebra, calculus, trigonometry, and now Jacob Barnett, Jake, is studying for a master's degree in quantum physics. He's 14 years old, and he's been tipped as a future Nobel Prize winner. When did you realise you could do math? When did you realise you could just see numbers in a way that most ordinary people can't?
Math has always been really natural to me. I've always really been able to do it, but perhaps when I realized I was different from other people, I went to the Butler Planetarium once. It's this university in my state, but basically there was a seminar on Mars, and he had asked a question, and he basically asked why the moons around Mars were shaped like potatoes. And I had said, oh, well, you know, the mass of the moons is insufficient for the gravity to make them round. And so I guess it was strange that no other 3-year-olds are able to come up with that kind of stuff.
Let me just pause there. You were 3 years old when you said this?
Yes.
God sent the Son. They call him Jesus. He came to love. He will and forgive. He lived and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave may stand to prove my Savior lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future, and life is worth a living just because he lives.
What is it that you do naturally? You remember your early childhood? What is one activity that gave you that extra joy, that seemed to flow naturally out of you? And you could possibly do it now. Even in your adult years, still, when you think of it, it brings you that extra element of joy, and you wish you could do it more. Could you please write in the chat what comes to your mind about your most natural talent? If you think back of your early childhood, what's the one thing that came to you naturally, and you still have it, by the way? Even though years later, I want you to know you still have that talent. You still have that talent. So we talked about talents. Your talents mature and grow and develop by the knowledge you acquire. And you're always acquiring new knowledge. You're always acquiring knowledge through movies you watch, through books you read, through courses you take in school. This is all knowledge, and they're all accumulated in your wonderful brain. So if you have a child that's artistically inclined and you give him artistic things, his artistic talents will develop. If you have a child like this Jake Barnett, who intentionally loves math, and math comes naturally to him, and you give him math books, that will develop his analytical talents. Now, talents and knowledge are not enough by themselves to make strength, because we have to add to them what we call skills. And skills is the ability to use your knowledge and your talents in meaningful and productive way. Knowledge of itself, my friends, has no value. Talents by themselves have no value until you know how to begin to use them. So we add to them appropriate skills to make them effective and meaningful in the business, in the world in which we live. Let me give an example of what I mean. You could learn everything you need to know about a car by reading a book and watching YouTube videos. But this does not make you a driver, because you need to know the steps and go into have some driving lessons to teach you how to drive, But to that, we need to add experience. We need to add experience. And experience is the ability to adapt your knowledge, your talent, knowledge, and skills in relationship to the changing circumstances of life. Let me repeat that. Experience is the ability to adapt your talent, knowledge, and skills to meaningful situations in life. Let me explain what I mean. I learned how to drive when I was in Cairo, Egypt. I was 15 years old, and I learned how to drive in Cairo, Egypt. If I drive in Canada the way I used to drive in Cairo, Egypt, I can assure you I will lose my license in 24 hours or less. If I go to Cairo and try to drive in Cairo like I tried the last time I was there, if I try to drive in Cairo the way I drive on the 401 here in Toronto, I will kill a few people in 24 hours or less. So you see, experience is the ability to adapt our natural talents, what we know in our knowledge, the skills we have developed to the changing life circumstances. Now I have a different word when it comes to this. Yes, strength is an ability, but it also reflects wisdom. It also reflects wisdom. And the Bible says that the knowledge of God is the beginning of wisdom. And the Bible says that your character, according to Genesis 1:26, is a reflection of God's character. According to Genesis 1:26, your strength is a reflection of God's character, because God said, let us make man in our own image. Now I'd like to share with you something else in the strength psychology field. We call it strength in combinations. Strength in combinations. Each of your strengths is very much like the key on a piano keyboard. It has its own unique quality, it has its own unique purpose, it has unique sound, it has its unique role. But when you put more than one key together, or more than one string of the guitar together, you get a chord. You get a chord. And that has its more powerful combination. It has its own unique purpose and power to do more together. And my friend, according to Gallup and StrengthsFinder, the probability that anyone else in the world has the same 5 strengths that you have in the same order is 1 in 33 million. The probability that anyone has your top 5 strengths in the same order is 1 in 33 million. Now, according to the strength psychology, you don't only have 5 strengths, but you have 34 strengths in different intensity. And the probability that anyone else has your top 10 strengths in the same order is 1 in 447 trillion. 1 in 447 trillion. When God said, let us make man in our own image, He had you in mind as a very unique person. The probability of 1 in 447 trillion means that since the beginning of creation, God did not make another person like you. God did not make another person like you. How does this make you feel? How does this make you feel? Does it make you feel special? Does it make you feel proud? Does it make you feel grateful? Does it make you feel unique? You are very unique, my friend. In your strength profile, you are very, very unique, and no one else in the whole world is like you. So why is it that only 17% of us use strength every day? Why is it that so many of us try to be like somebody else? There are many reasons, but I'd like to share with you one. I call it because we live in the not good enough world. We live in the not good enough world. I don't know about you. I grew up in the not good enough world. You see, my father died, I was 18 months old. And as a result of this, I spent a lot of time with my cousins. And ever since my childhood, I recall very vividly, I was always compared with my cousins. Why can't you behave like so-and-so? Why can't you sit down quietly like so-and-so? Why can't you speak properly like so-and-so? Why can't you read like so-and-so? Why can't you, the worst of all of them was, why can't you be good in school like your cousins? And my friends, I was not good in school. I was terrible in school. If I got a passing grade, I rejoiced. And I could not be like my cousins. But because I could not be like my cousins, I always felt I was not good enough. I was not good enough. I finished school and I started working, and most of my career was in the sales and marketing field. And if you know anyone in this field, you know they give you your quota and you make your numbers one month, and the next month you don't make your numbers and you're not good enough. They give you your quota, you make it up, and guess what? They raise it up so the next time you don't make your numbers and you're not good enough. Our whole culture. Your neighbor gets a brand new car and you look at your 15-year-old car and you feel, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough money to be like him. I'm not good enough. Your kids come back from school talking about all the wonderful toys and holidays they've taken and their friends have taken, and you feel you're not good enough to give them all yet you could and you wish you could. Our whole media, our advertising on TV is constantly telling you, if you don't buy this, if you don't have this, if you don't look like this, you are not good enough. So we try to strive to be somebody else. We take on jobs that pay more or have bigger titles, are more impressive, to help us compensate for this feeling of not being good enough. And the result is we burn out, we become stressed, and we do not live within our strength. I'm grateful that your God and my God has a different paradigm. Philippians 4:8 is one of my favorite verses. It says, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are right, whatever things are pure and lovely, whatever is admirable, if there's anything that's worthy of praise, think about these things. Think about these things. My friends, we need to start thinking about what's right with people, not what's wrong with people. So what would happen if we start thinking of what's right with people? Let me share with you this study that was, or this assessment, or this study. It's very well known in the field of education. It was done by Dr. Elizabeth Hurlick of Columbia University, one of the most prestigious universities in the United States. Dr. Hurlick took 2 classrooms, grade 7 math kids. In one classroom, the teacher was instructed to correct the mistakes of the students. Isn't that what teachers are supposed to do? Always correct the mistakes of the students. The other teacher in the other classroom was instructed to ignore the mistakes, but focus and praise the child for their correct answers. The first teacher, do the traditional teaching model, correct the mistakes, show the child where they are wrong and correct them. The second one, ignore the mistakes, but praise the child for their correct answers. After a period of time, they retested the students. The classroom where the teacher corrected the mistakes, their grades improved by 19%. Not bad, 19% improvement. The other classroom, where the teacher praised the children for their correct answers, their grades improved by a whopping 71%. 71%. Do you know someone in your life, maybe a child, who comes home, he has an A in math, an F in arts, an F in history, an F in geography, but an A in sciences? What do the parents focus on? Do you know a child that maybe needs a word of praise to show them that they've got something right with them? Maybe a child who feels beat up because he's been bullied in school, and you can put a word of affirmation showing them. And my friends, no, not only a child, how about an adult who's constantly feel inferior because he or she is comparing themselves with others? If God brings the name of a person like this to your mind right now, would you please write their name down on a piece of paper? Please don't put it in the chat, but put it on your notes. And would you commit to ask God to help you see something that is beautiful, something that's worthy of praise in them, and go and show it to them, because you could transform their life. Because in so doing, you are pointing to their God-given strength. Without knowing it, you are actually showing them and pointing to their own God-given talents and abilities and natural strength. and you will bring a delight to their day, and you could transform their life for a long time. What we're going to do now, we're going to break you in teams of two. We'll allow Zoom to break you up in teams of two, and we're going to do something simple. In your teams, we don't know who is going to be partnered with who. We'll let Zoom decide that. We're going to ask you to discuss one thing. What's the most important thing or the best thing you have learned so far? We're about the midpoint right now. So what we want you to do is want to focus on what's the most important thing that you have learned so far. Could you please take a moment and do that? We're going to give you about 3 minutes for this exercise. Is that all right? So take 3 minutes and discuss with your partner what's the best thing you have learned so far. Now you know pretty much everything you need to know about strength. Now you know pretty much everything you need to know about strength. But the interesting thing about strength, it's very much like your muscles. If you exercise them, they develop, they grow. And if you ignore them, they atrophy and get weaker. So the book we're going to send you has about 42 different exercises. So when I say we're going to give you a free lifetime membership to this strength gym. And what we'd like to do is go through these exercises and begin to use them at the time, at the pace that you like. In the Strength Learning Lab that we encourage you to join, we go through them little by little to help you begin to practice them. And very much like going to the gym, it's much more fun if you go with a friend. So we encourage you to do this with a partner, with a friend. Find someone you share with them what you are doing and help them exercise with you, because you might bring them a blessing, but much more importantly, it will encourage you in the journey as you go along. One of those exercises that you will find in the book, which we hope you have done in your homework, is a simple exercise. We say a walk down memory lane. We encourage you to look in the past and make a list of activities or responsibilities that you did or you participated in that energized you. Activities in the past or even in the present that you do now, that when you do them, you feel stronger, you feel energized. You feel energized. Why we ask you to take inventory of these? Because as you do that, as you practice that, your strength antennas will go up and you begin to identify similar opportunities where you can do the same. And you begin to develop your muscles, your strength muscles grow as you do that. Let me to explain what I mean by that, to give you an illustration. If you decide you're going to buy a new car, maybe you decide you're going to buy a Honda Civic. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look on the road, you see Honda Civic, Honda Civic, Honda Civic. Why? Because your mind is in tune to looking for this. The same applies with your strength. So that's an exercise. Maybe you have done it in your homework, but we hope you can practice it more and more frequently and often. As a matter of fact, let's take a moment just for the benefit of our discussion later on. If you have done that exercise at home, in your homework, could you please write one of those activities that you normally do or that you did in the past? It could be something from your high school yearbook or some activity you did that really brought you a sense of joy. Could you please write it down? We might come back to it in our discussion later on. So now we've covered strength, and we hope we've given you a formula to help you define, own, and articulate so you can communicate your strength. We're going to walk now, how does this relate to your life purpose and vision and hopes, the roles you play, and the people in your life, as well as the goals and activities of your life. So here we're going to come back to the application of this to your life and your roles and your future. The first area you need to look at is, how does this relate to your life purpose? How does your strength relate to your life purpose? How does your strength relate to your life purpose? Please take a moment and watch this short video.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's, you know, it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, you know, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened. You're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now, right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
Okay, here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
When you know your why, your life becomes more impactful because you are walking towards your purpose. So why are you here? Why are you here? What is your purpose? What's your purpose for your life? We'll start with that. What is your life purpose? Why are you here? You know, there are many books that were written around the issue of life purpose, around defining life purpose. But I love the simplicity of the early church catechisms. The catechisms were simple statements written back in the 1500s to articulate the essence of the Christian faith. And one of the catechisms says, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. You see, this is the highest level. That's your purpose. That's the reason for which you're created, my friend. So anything that you do, you have to think, will it glorify God and or will it help me enjoy Him more and more in my days? And out of that, you begin to define the purpose for all you do. Out of that, you begin to have a vision of all the possibilities, of all the things in the world that you could do that could either glorify God or help you enjoy Him forever. That's how you develop a vision and a dream of what the future will hold. Because everything starts with a dream. I don't know about you, when our children were small, I'm sure almost every parent does this. When children are small, we ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? Because we want them to have a vision. We want them to have dreams and hopes of the future. Unfortunately, we grow up and people say, stop dreaming, be realistic. My friend, I do not know But I want you to know that whether you are, I don't know how old you are, but whether you are in your 20s, 30s, 60s, or 80 years old like me, in the eyes of your Heavenly Father, you are still His beloved child. And He wants to ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up, child? What do you want to be when you grow up? Ask God. You know, the Bible says that in Proverbs 29:18, it says, without a vision, people perish. Without a vision, your strength will atrophy and diminish and withered and die. So begin to ask God to give you a vision. Begin to stimulate these wonderful ideas of what you want to be when you grow up. Because out of that picture, out of that vision, you begin to see roles that you can play. Because your roles are your life calling. People say, I want to know my life calling. Your life calling is not the profession that you take, but the roles you play within that profession. The roles you play in your day in and day out. I'm sure you've seen some of these pictures in the past, in a church pageant. Now, these children did not have a clue about their strength. They did not really understand their roles. They were simply placed on that stage by a bunch of adults to entertain another bunch of adults and justify the Sunday school budget. It was stressful for most of them. As a matter of fact, this little boy in white turban, he was our son at 3 years of age. Noel, our son, never forgave me for putting him through that torture. His mother was sitting beside me in tears. I had to hold her back from running to the stage and grabbing him off the stage. And my friend, if you are in a career, in a job, or in a situation, or a ministry, that's not a good match for your God-given strength, that's causing you stress and pain, I want you to know, God grieves for you. God grieves for you. And He says, child, let's look for something different. Let's make a change. So how do you find that change? You first find it through the people you interact with. And here I want to borrow some thoughts from an excellent book by Dr. Gordon MacDonald called Restoring Your Spiritual Passion. And in your life, there are many different types of people. The first group of people, I will call them your important people. And your important people, they know, they understand your strength. To these people, you have already communicated your understanding and your belief of what your strength formula is all about. These are the people who collaborate with you. They are engaged in the drama on the stage of life. They are engaged with you in the drama in the stage of life. But they play different roles. They collaborate with you. So if you're performing a role on the stage, maybe they are the people who are selling tickets. Maybe they are the ones who are controlling the lighting. Maybe they are the ushers. Maybe they are the conductor. Maybe they are the author of the play. They are all engaged with you and committed to your success. These are the people who open doors of opportunities for you, open new jobs and lead you to new jobs and new careers where your strength can grow and develop and mature over time. But then there are also the teachable people. The people are the people who look forward to learn from you and grow because of the roles you play. They are the people who pay for the tickets and come and sit in the pews and watch you perform, and out of that they're energized. But unfortunately, there's another group of people. We call them the draining people. We're not going to spend too much time on this because most likely you know what I mean. So my question to you is, where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your time? Who do you communicate with day in and day out? Do you communicate with your important people, the teachable people, or are you wasting most of your time with the draining people who are not likely to grow from what you do and not likely to partner and collaborate and support you in what you do? You see, out of your relationship with your important people, you begin to develop what we call SMART goals. Your important people will help you in developing goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and also time dependent. That's what we call SMART goals. Because your goals are little projects. They are little projects that direct your commitment and reflect your priorities. Your goals are little projects that direct your commitment and reflect your priorities. The famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky says that most hockey players skate to where the puck is, but great hockey players skate to where the puck is going. So as you look at your developing your strength and your strength formula, look for where the opportunities and the future resides. Be aware of where the market dynamics, where the ministry opportunities, where do you want to grow in relationship to the changing world around you. Because out of this, you begin to develop how you manage your activities and how you manage your time. And here we'd like to introduce you to a little video that we call the jar of time, the jar of time. How do you manage your time? Or better still, how do you manage your life? You see, you and I are given a jar. We all have exactly the same size jar, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And you and I are accountable for what goes in that jar. Unfortunately, before you know it, you begin to lose control of what goes in that jar, and people begin to put some of what they call their urgent demands. They seem to be small and insignificant, little things that come in the form of email, text messages, calls for help, and all of them, they take a space in that jar. But unfortunately, there are what we call the big rocks of life. These things that are, most of the times, they are not urgent, but they are important. And by God's design, they are supposed to fit in that jar. Oh, for example, there's your family. They love you and they need some of your time. There's the very important people that need your time and attention. They need to go in the jar. There's the need for time to think and plan and prioritize your life. And oh, of course, you've got your body that needs some rest and sleep and food and nourishment. And oh, there's also God. He loves you and he wants to spend time with you to nourish you and develop you and take care of you. He needs to go in the jar. And before you know it, your jar is overflowing and you are overloaded. And you say, I don't have enough time. But God had designed that all of these things are supposed to fit nicely in the jar that he has given you. Let me share with you how this is supposed to work in what we call the principle of permanence. The principle of permanence. So we start with an empty jar like everybody else. You start with a full empty week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the things that are more permanent, the things that last longer, they go in the jar first. You are created for an eternal relationship with God. And he's going to be with you throughout eternity. This means that God goes in the jar first. And oh, by the way, you have your body. And I've got news for you. It's the only one you've got. And you're going to live with that body until they put you in a box. So your body, your need for sleep and attention for what makes you feel well goes in the jar second. And then, of course, my friend, there's your family. If you're married, by God's design, you're supposed to live with your spouse until they put one of you in a box. So your spouse goes in the jar. If you have children, your job is to nurse them, develop them until you push them out of the nest. And the sooner, the better. So they go in the jar after that. And oh, of course, there's the very important people. And the time to think and plan and prioritize your life. All of these big rocks, they go in the jar first. And then you allow the demands of life, the requests of other people, the things that we call urgent but very often not as important. They go in the jar and they filter in the spaces that is left. And then you close the jar and you take that one extra day, special day of rest. You see, by God's design, all of them are supposed to fit in the jar. And you say, thank you, God, for a week well spent. Okay, we're going to send you a link to a simple Excel spreadsheet. We call it a time budgeting tool. A simple time budgeting tool that we have used with some of our friends. And it's simply put this way. On one side, it's an Excel spreadsheet, nothing fancy. On one side, you list all the activities and the priorities of, as we talked about in this video, the principle of permanence. And then on the other right-hand side, there's places where you begin to define how much time you should allocate to each of these areas. That's what we call a time budgeting sheet. If you need help with this tool further, we also have a book that we will send you a link to download called Life Plans. It's a collection of about different plans and ideas of how to begin to structure your life around what you believe is your important purpose. My friends, we've shared with you a topical framework designed to help you understand and communicate your strength, but also prioritize how you use your strength in relationship to your purpose, the people in your life, and activities. There's one more frame that we have not covered yet, and it's the frame of love. The frame of love. This stuff, I have to tell you very honestly, is easy to teach, but it's a challenge to apply because it is countercultural. For this reason, you need to approach it unless you have total love for yourself, for how God shaped you, love for the important people in your life and the teachable people in your life, but most importantly, love for the God who have put you together. He knows you, He understands you, He knows your hopes and aspiration, He knows the purpose for your life, He knows the people around you, He understands your goals, and He wants to support you. So unless you have a personal relationship with Him, this becomes a challenge to apply. If you don't have that personal relationship with Him, would you please contact us? We have a web page in which we have a video about how we have defined that personal relationship with God, and we would be delighted to share it with you. As you watch this video, please pay attention to the words on the screen that go along with that video. Watch the words, please. And sign your name to it, sign your name to it, sign your name to it. My friends, I hope through this webinar we gave you a collection of paint brushes and maybe a couple of paint tubes. And here's an exercise that we'd like you to do when you're in the comfort of your home. It's actually, you'll see a diagram for it in the last page of your handout notes. Take time with God. Ask Him to help you have a dream, have a vision of your future. And within that dream, within that vision, start by listing what you learned about your strength. Maybe you're not an artist, don't feel that you have to paint, but start by sketching a few words on this sheet of paper. of your strength. Then add to it a simple statement that reflects your purpose. Remember, we talked about your purpose being to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Think of the roles you might like to play within that purpose. Then list the names of a few of your important people. Along with that, try to set some goal. The one area you'd like to change in your life, what would that look like? And then begin to put some activities in your calendar to make that happen, You've been very gracious participants, and we want to thank you. We're going to send you a link to do a short survey, and when you submit that survey, it will also provide you with another link to where you can download a copy of that book, provide access to all these other resources we've talked about, and we would be very glad to respond and support you in any way we can. We want to thank you for giving us this time. You may need to stretch a little bit after sitting for so long. We thank you for your participation. Now we're going to still hang around here. We're going to open the microphone for just a free, simple question and answer period for those of you who would like to stay. Those of you who need to go, we thank you for your time, and we trust that the Lord will bless you and encourage you in every way. Thank you for your kindness and allowing us to be part of your life this evening. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.